Welcome back to another exciting episode of bringing Jesus back into focus. Why did he go out of focus? Well, 1700 years ago, at the time of Constantine in the 4th century AD, the Jewish Christian leaders became Jewish. That is to say, they were Christian leaders up until then, and then they became Jewish Christian leaders, and they converted all Christians. Instead of worshipping the singular, divine, loving, spiritual consciousness and life force that Jesus was at one with, generally called God. So this is the divine spiritual being that Jesus is at one with. Pure love, he said so. Non-violent, he said so. They converted them back to worship the old Jewish God of Yahweh. Now, Yahweh is not monotheistic. The Jewish religion, I'm sorry to tell you this, but it's not monotheistic, as anyone with half a brain can see. They worship two gods, two very different gods, opposing forces, exactly the same as Romans, Greeks, Egyptians and others. Rome had the war god Mars, brutal, violent, genocidal maniac, and they prayed to this deity to go and kill and slaughter and build the Roman Empire up, steal land. The Greeks had Ares, same thing, a temple to Ares, temple to Mars. The Egyptians had Sekhmet. Now, the Jews had Yahweh one. I call it Yahweh one because it's the only thing you can do with this dilemma. They'd go to the temple of Yahweh one, the war god, the stinking, murdering, genocidal war god, offer up the sacrifice, just as the Romans offered a sacrifice for an animal. It's exactly the same process. The priests would bless them all. The Roman priests would bless the priests, the soldiers off to war. The Jewish priests would bless the Israelite soldiers off to war. Exactly the same ceremony, same war god. Different name, Sekhmet, Ares, Mars, Yahweh one. Every single one of those deities was a murdering, thieving, lying war god. And they would go and then kill in the name of Mars, Ares, Sekhmet, Yahweh one. It's just a fact. It's there in the old Jewish religion testament. Then the Romans had a god of peace, Pax. The Greeks had Irene. And the Egyptians had a calming god. I can't remember his name. But if you went to that temple, that you'd pray to that god, you'd calm down. Maybe not go to war this time. Be more calm about this. So you see, they all had another opposing deity or life force of goodness and love and light and peace and make peace with others. That's a different god. The Romans, the Egyptians, the Greeks were all very honest about this. They had another temple, another name, different deity. They had to, because it's a different life force. It's not evil. It's the opposite. The Jews, however, were cunning. They thought up this idea that if they called this loving God the exact same name as their war god, Yahweh, they could have two Yahwehs in one. Combine the loving God with the murdering, thieving God and call them by the same name. Now that is like putting Adolf Hitler and Mother Teresa in one house and saying, oh, that's the same, they're the same person. Sorry, that's a schizophrenic religion. It's dualistic. The most accurate way to describe Yahweh is one monotheistic body called Yahweh. That's true. Two heads. Now what happened was the corrupt Jewish Christians under Constantine left the one singular divine loving life force of clear light mind of love that Jesus had become at one with, as Buddha did. They left that God, or that living being in the heavenly spiritual world, that consciousness of love, and they shifted all the Christians back to worship the dualistic religion of the Jews. That's 1700 years ago, and the Jewish Christian churches teach that still today, and that is why I left the Jewish Christian Catholic Church when I was 16, because they were teaching a lie. They said there's only one God in the whole Bible. That's a lie. The Jews worship two gods. And also the book of Revelation is a filthy, stinking book of Daniel from the Old Testament religion that's put into the Gospels near Jesus, and that figure coming back on the clouds that starts famines and wars and puts diseases on children's bodies and poisons the waters. They say that is Jesus Christ coming back on the clouds. That is a filthy, stinking slander. That book should be ripped out and burnt by every Jewish Christian church in the world and cut the Bible in two. Put the Jewish religion on the shelf. Stop reading it. Let the Jews read their schizophrenic religion and worship their two gods. That's their problem. Jesus tried to bring them out of that problem into the one pacifist, loving God. Christians should never be Jewish. That's a disgrace. And they're still teaching this rubbish to children today. And the Jewish Christian churches in Australia, the Catholic Church and the others, they're all failing, falling over. There's just some grey-haired people in most of them now because young people are too intelligent to listen to this rubbish. So I had to write some books because they were slandering my good mate. I've only knew him as love and non-violence. When I left the Jewish Christian Catholic Church, I took Jesus with me and his words. I never left him and his words in that way. They were in my heart and soul. I was never interested in Jewish religion or the book of Revelations. In fact, when I was a little child and in church, I wondered why they were reading the Old Testament Jewish religion to us. I thought, why are they reading the Jewish religion to us? Why are they doing that? And then they'd talk about his parable and I'd go, oh yeah, I love that parable. See, it resonates even with little children. His truth of love resonates even with a little child. I was lucky because it went deep into my heart and soul and it never left me. That's what's kept me alive all this time. Particularly at the moment, I'm fighting a deadly neurotoxic fungal infection, and the medical profession in Australia have plotted to make sure I don't get any help because I've got too much evidence there, incompetent and negligent. So that's another matter. I have to pray for them too. Oh dear, I have to forgive them. Oh no. Yep, they were devoid of love. They've become sort of robots or something. So false identities. So the Gospels of Jesus Unplugged, that was the first book I wrote a year ago. It's the interlinear Greek translations of the Gospels, written in a much better way. I removed the Jewish satanic sort of overlays of the apocalyptic rubbish. They're gone. And instead of saying God the Father, another very important point is Jesus never used the word Yahweh in all of his time. He couldn't say God is Yahweh because Yahweh, there's two different gods called Yahweh. Do you see that? That's why why didn't he say Yahweh? If he's talking about the Jewish God. He didn't. He couldn't. There are two Yahwehs. He would have had to say there's two Yahwehs. And as soon as he would have said that, they would have stoned him to death. That's blasphemy. See, he was in a really difficult spot. So he said God the Father. Father, of course, it's a patriarchal society. He could get away with that. If he'd have said God our mother, well, they would have stoned him to death for that. But I think of her as being a her, she, because women give birth to us here in this earth world, which is, poisonous and full of evil, as well as some love coming from heaven. Well, the heavenly spiritual being gives birth to our spiritual body, so why not call her she? And women on the whole don't start wars in this world. It's normally the rock ape gorillas who do that, the males, the crackpots. So that book's available around the world, and the Teachings of Jesus Unplugged, I'll be reading from chapter 20 in this episode. And that gives you an explanation both historically and just his words, explaining them in a better way, in a more fuller, powerful way, that you have to become spiritual now, in your spiritual body now, before your body of flesh dies, and feed it to the vultures, which is exactly what Jesus said. So I just quote his words because I've always known him as love and non-violence, so it's easy for me to do this work. Well, sort of. With a neurotoxic fungal infection and poisoning your brain, it does make that a little difficult. But their love is with me, and I'll do what I can. It's not a great theological work. It's just someone who knows Jesus his whole life as love and non-violence, and so I can write about that quite easily. And his words are there, and the Jewish words are there in their old Jewish religion to show that they worship two gods. You just have to quote them, that's all. So the Teaching of Jesus Unplugged will be published in the first fortnight of 2026 and available around the world. That's the book that's about to be published. And this is the back dialogue of the book generally, on the back cover. The spiritual teachings of Jesus are a universal calling to all human children on earth to awaken into our spiritual body and true identity of love and non-violence before our dualistic body and mind of the flesh dies and returns to the earth. Only our spiritual body and soul live on. We must prevent the dualistic mind of our earthly body of flesh from controlling us and become at one with our spiritual mind, filled only with the loving life force of our loving spiritual Creator. Then our two bodies, one made of the earth and one formed of spirit, can be in harmony and at one in purpose to bring the spiritual love and peace of heaven to earth for all children. Only true spiritual children of love and light can enter the heavenly spiritual world. All those children divided within themselves between love and hatred cannot enter. The words of Jesus can awaken and transform us. Because I nearly die every day from this fungal infection, It's quite sort of a bit like meningitis in the brain there. So I had to formulate a prayer some time ago now, which I love saying every day because it brings me into my spiritual body, thinking only about my spiritual body. I'm in a lot of pain now while I'm talking to you, but doing this work really lifts up my spirit anyway because it's all spiritual sort of work and things. So it connects me to heaven in a certain way of doing this work for them. So, and bringing this message to you, that heaven's only love and God's only love and Jesus is only love. Don't listen to the Jewish Christians. So this prayer helps me come into my spiritual body. So I'll say it now for you. I use the word she. The one thing about the English word she is it's got both the male he and the female she in the one pronoun. So I think that's quite neat. The spiritual beings beyond gender. The daily prayer to center yourself into spirit. As I rest upon this earth, the Holy One, she will give birth to who I really am, awakening me from clay and sand, a spiritual child of the divine, with only her love that fills my mind. To every creature I will be kind in every single land, for this is truly who I am, a spiritual child of the loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world, born out of the earth to bring her love to children in need and help guide them home to heaven, as she has guided me. Through the spiritual way and teachings that Jesus gave us to be just as he, a spiritual child of love on earth. So I tried to think, well, that's who I really am. And I'm nearly dying every day, so I've got to get ready to leave in that body, the spiritual body of love. That's why I pray for these doctors who have left me to die and all the rest of it and blocked. They've threatened people. They've threatened GPs who've tried to help me. It's been quite a serious amount of evil going on. But I have to pray for them. I have to forgive them. I don't hate them, or I don't want them to hurt them or anything like that. They're not very nice people, but what's new in this world? There's a few hanging around who are starting wars. The Earth Spirit logo at the bottom is the cross and the dove in a circle, and the Earth Spirit represents the exact same. That encapsulates Jesus' teachings really well, that logo that I've sort of created. The cross represents his dead body of flesh on the cross that was buried, and it died, and it didn't rise up again. He says that. The dove on top of the cross represents his spiritual body that he flew away to heaven. And we all have this dynamic. We both have these two bodies with us right now. Everyone does. Even Vladimir Putin and Netanyahu, these satanic children, they all have this spiritual body still in them, even though they've covered it now in stinking filth and death and murder and darkness. They don't believe that, though. See, they're satanic children, so they don't believe in heaven or a divine spiritual being of love, or that they've got a spiritual body. They simply don't believe in any of that. That's why they can kill and murder, because they're false identities. They've become a shadow figure that they've created out of their own imaginations. So that's the two bodies, our prayer. And then we just go into the chapter 20 of the book of the teachings. I'll just read through it. Always be ready to die and live, says Jesus. John 3:6, Jesus taught, flesh only gives birth to flesh, spirit only gives birth to spirit. Marvel not that I tell you, you must be born again from above. John 5:24, Jesus said, he who hears my words and understands their meaning and lives by them will not be judged, but pass through the death experience of their body of flesh into eternal spiritual life. The Gospel of Thomas, Jesus taught, come into being as you pass away. Now those three little sayings, Jesus is saying, look, if you move into your spiritual body, it's not the flesh, it's another body. Also, in that spiritual body, you will no longer do any wrongdoing or sin or hurt anyone. You'll certainly never join a filthy, stinking, satanic army in the world, or Navy or Air Force. You won't do that. So you'll be safe. And of course, hopefully love others on your way to heaven. And so you won't have any negative judgment or karma or reaping what you sow effects after you die, because there aren't any in you. You haven't created any darkness, or if you did sin, you were doing wrongdoings, you changed. You turned over a new leaf. You came back onto the path. You may have wandered off in that dark path, as we all do from time to time perhaps, but we come back, and then you're back on the path and heaven's in front of you. There's nothing between you and heaven except a block that you put there yourself, a darkness. Netanyahu and Putin and Hamas and all these other mass murdering satanic children, they've put layer after layer after layer after layer after layer of dark, stinking, rotten filth between themselves and the loving spiritual creator who's placed in them a beautiful spiritual body for them to have now and in heaven. They've rejected that. So only I can block my connection to heaven. No one else can on earth. So this is Jesus' teaching. Be ready to die, because you're going to live then in your spiritual body if you're ready spiritually to pass through death. So be ready to die and live again in a spiritual body. Always be ready to leave. In these verses in Luke 17:33, Jesus states that we have two different bodies with us right now, and the death experience can occur at any time during the day or night while going about our usual daily activities. One person died in bed, one person died while grinding grain, one person died while standing in a field, and another died while lying on a couch in the Gospel of Thomas. Jesus states that our spiritual body goes to be in the presence of our loving spiritual creator to reap as we have sown, and the body of dead flesh is just food for the vultures. Now these are Jesus' words. The Jewish Christian churches don't teach this. They say your dead body of flesh is going to rise again. Jesus says here, no, that's wrong. It's just food for the vultures now. There's no life in it. Your spiritual body has left. That's your true life, and you're going to reap what you sow. The water in the vase leaves the vase when the vase is smashed to pieces. The water can't stay in the vase anymore. We must always be ready throughout every minute of every day to die to the flesh and rise in our spiritual body to be in our loving Creator's presence in the heavenly spiritual world by leading a spiritual life of love. Seek heaven within while still alive. The Thomas Gospel, Jesus said, always look towards our loving Creator as a spiritual child for as long as you live, so you may not die unprepared and then try to see her but be unable to see. The heavens and earth will roll up before you when you die. But he who lives out of our loving Creator's spiritual life force will not taste death and will enter the heavenly spiritual world. Jesus is simply saying we must awaken to our inner spiritual life and live out of our spiritual body and soul mind of love every single day that our loving Creator gave to us to come to heaven in. And we must never turn away from her and her love and forget about her, for we do not want to die while that connection is broken and be unable to find it again. We connect to heaven from within, and we only have to think of her every day, to be with her and her love and be ready to be in her presence when called. Now I have to do this all the time now because my body's being poisoned to death by this fungal infection, and you really know it. It is agony. But I'm able to be blessed with this belief and faith and truth because I know it's the truth. So I'm just preparing myself. And this is how I do it. I just talk to them all the time. I have to. I'm in that much pain. So Luke 12:16, Jesus told them this parable, becoming spiritually lazy. This is the don't be lazy about this. Jesus told them this parable. The land of a certain wealthy man yielded plentiful crops. He thought to himself, what shall I do as I have nowhere to store my crops? So he decided to pull down his barns and build greater ones to store all his crops and his goods. And he said to his soul, Soul, you have many goods laid up for many years. Relax and have a rest. Eat, drink, and be merry. However, the loving spiritual creator said to him, O thoughtless one, this night your spirit and soul will be called back into my presence. Then all those earthly material things you have stored up, to whom will they belong? He had only laid up earthly treasure for his material life in the flesh, but had stopped laying up spiritual treasures for his spiritual life in heaven. That's the trap of the rich and the wealthy. This simple tale tells of a man who had so much material possessions stored up that he felt secure for the next few years in his body of flesh. So he figured he could have a rest from spiritual ways and just enjoy the indulgences of the flesh for the next few years instead. But his body of flesh died that night. He had to leave his body of flesh and return in his spiritual body and soul to our loving spiritual creator to see if he was ready to enter the heavenly spiritual world. We all have to work and store up enough material possessions to live on for a healthy physical life. But it should be balanced out with a daily spiritual life as well that is always our primary identity. The temptation to shift into making our body of flesh the primary identity when we have an abundance of material wealth to enjoy can lead us to forget about our spiritual life. And despite our body of flesh having an abundance to nourish it, our spiritual practices may falter, weaken and stop, starving our spiritual body and dimming our spiritual light, which is the only body that leaves at death. Best to remain strong in our spiritual body that leaves at death, as all bodies of flesh grow weak and old and disintegrate back into the earth from which they were formed, and we take no material possessions with us. The lilies in the field, Jesus said, "Do not worry about your life regarding what you shall eat, nor about your body about what you shall wear, for your spiritual life is greater than food rations, and the body more than clothing. Observe the ravens, for they cannot sow nor reap, and have no storehouse or barn, yet our loving Creator feeds them. How much more will our loving Creator take care of you than those birds? And which of you by worrying could increase his stature by even a small amount? If you are unable to do the least important of things, why are you worried about the rest? Observe the lilies in the field, how they grow, yet they neither work nor spin. Yet I say to you, not even Solomon in all his glory was clothed like one of these. If such vegetation in the field today is then thrown tomorrow into the oven, how much more will our loving Creator clothe you, you children of little spiritual faith? Do not waste time seeking after what you should eat or what you should drink, nor have a doubtful mind about getting them. For all these things the nations of the world seek after, and our loving Creator knows you all have need of these earthly things. But seek the spiritual heavenly world of our loving Creator first, and all these things will be just additional to you. Do not fear, little flock, for our loving Creator is pleased to give you her heavenly spiritual world to live in. Sell what you have and give to those in need. Make yourself pouches which do not wear out, to contain a spiritual treasure that does not fail in the heavenly world. Do not store up treasure on earth for yourselves, where moth and rust can destroy, and where thieves break through and steal. But store up treasures for your heavenly spiritual life, where no thief can come or moth or rust destroy. For where your treasure is, there also will be your heart and soul. So do not worry about tomorrow today, for tomorrow will have its own challenges to deal with. Here Jesus is providing a general description of our daily earthly lives and our bodies of flesh and their needs. While not denying we all need these things to support our body of flesh, he continually reminds us we have another spiritual body which will be far more beautiful in the heavenly spiritual world. And as that is our primary goal, then all these material needs are just short-term additions, and we shouldn't over-worry about them. And he reminds us not to waste our time storing up earthly treasures that all eventually decay over time anyway. The main thing Jesus teaches is to move into our spiritual body and soul mind of love first, as this is eternal. Then by living a spiritual life on earth and sharing the loving life force from heaven in us with other children, we will be preparing to receive that same love in heaven when our short time here on earth is over. In this way we are ready to die and then live again in spirit. Prepare to have an angel's body. Heads up. Matthew 22:29. You don't need toilet paper there, as I said to my late sister Joan as she passed away 2 years ago. Some Sadducees asked Jesus about a woman. Some Sadducees asked Jesus about a woman who had married 7 times. And which husband would she be with after her dead body of flesh resurrected from the dead? Jesus replied, "You are mistaken, for you do not know the teachings nor the power of our loving spiritual Creator. For when their spirits and souls rise from the death of their body of flesh, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, for they are like spiritual angels in the heavenly spiritual world and can die no more. And as for the dead body of flesh rising, have you not read what our loving spiritual Creator said to you in the past? I am the Creator of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, who have all died. Our loving Creator is not a God of dead bodies of flesh, but of those who have come alive to their spirit." Jesus is giving us an incentive and glimpse of our new spiritual body after we leave our body of flesh behind by describing them as being like angels' spiritual bodies that are eternal, unlike our bodies of flesh. But to have our spiritual angel-like body, we must be living out of it now and be ready to die to the body of flesh and leave it behind. Always be ready to die and live by leading a spiritual life now on earth. A caterpillar becomes the butterfly. We have another whole different body in us. I mean, when you think of the caterpillar-butterfly analogy, it is a worldwide universal analogy for two bodies, and your spiritual body leaves after your caterpillar body dies. They do not look the same. Being a gardener, caterpillars are slow-moving, sluggy things that just eat and poop. That's about all they do. They eat leaves and that's it. But then they form a chrysalis or cocoon around themselves, and they are transformed within the cocoon, and out comes the butterfly. That cocoon is made up of the words of Jesus. Do you get it? He transforms you. His words transform you into another body, another being. And butterflies, when they come out, they fly through the air and they only feed on the nectar of a flower. The golden nectar of life itself. And they fly through the air. The Greek word for air means breath, wind, and spirit. It's a beautiful analogy. Stay spiritually awake. Luke 12:35. Jesus said, "Be in readiness with your spiritual light always shining, then you will be like those who wait to return to be with their master after his wedding. And when he calls them to come to him, they immediately open their door and leave to go to him. Blessed are those servants who stay awake and are watching to hear his call. And when he calls, he will be ready to receive them himself and have them sit down with him to eat, and he will serve them with their food." If the master of the house knew what time the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and not allowed his house to be broken into. Likewise, you must always be spiritually ready to be in the presence of our loving spiritual Creator in the heavenly spiritual world when you are called. Jesus is telling his followers to always be spiritually alive and alert, and not to forget that at any given moment in time you may be called out of your body of flesh at the time of your death experience. We also have to remain vigilant against the thief of temptation and not sin, as this robs us of our spiritual life force. Then hopefully, if we have remained spiritually ready and well, we will come into the presence of our loving spiritual Creator and even meet our spiritual teacher Jesus and be able to sit with him and thank him for showing us the way home. Always be ready for your body of flesh to die and leave it behind, to live in the heavenly spiritual world of love in a perfect spiritual body where Jesus is waiting to greet you. As Jesus said, "Follow me to where I am going." The last words of Jesus written in the Gospel of John, the last of the four Gospels in the standard Jewish Christian Bible. The last words he spoke, "Follow me." He did not say, like Arnold Schwarzenegger in the Terminator, "I'll be back." Don't party too hard. Jesus was very practical. Luke 21:34. Jesus taught, "Be careful in case at any time your spirit and soul become weighed down with partying, drunkenness, taking mind-altering substances, and being overly distracted by the cares of this earthly life. For the day your spirit and soul is called will come upon you unexpectedly, and it comes to everyone on the face of the earth. Therefore always be alert and live out of the spiritual way of true life. Then you will be ready to stand before our loving spiritual Creator in the heavenly spiritual world." Jesus again warns us to be living out of our primary spiritual body and soul mind of love and non-violence here on earth before we pass through the death experience of our body of flesh, and not to be indulgent in sensual gratification and all of the distractions of this material world existence that we can become preoccupied with at the expense of our spiritual life. And no one knows for certain the hour of their death experience, but every child on earth will have to pass through it, and their spiritual body and soul will come into the presence of our loving spiritual Creator. Jesus is clearly stating that every child on earth is a spiritual child of our loving spiritual Creator, whether they know it or not, regardless of race, religion, or no religion. But only those who have been awakened spiritually and are living out of their spiritual identity of love and the spiritual way of life on earth will be able to enter a spiritual world of love. Always be ready to die to the flesh, be reborn into your spiritual body, and enter into a heavenly spiritual world of love. Jesus was a realist and a spiritualist as well. He was able to convey the importance of awakening to our ultimate spiritual life and identity, while living a healthy earthly life in a body of flesh. He was very honest in his statements about the death experience of our bodies of flesh, but he does not want us to forget that the reality of physical death can lead to another reality of spiritual, eternal life, providing we are spiritually awakened to our true identity of universal love before we leave. God is love. Love is life. Spread your butterfly wings before your caterpillar stops and dies. Open up your heart of love and your spiritual eyes. See the world around you through its material disguise. Bring the love of heaven here beneath the earth's blue skies. So that's that chapter about be ready to die and live. Now, the problem we all face, of course, with death, I'm in agony with this neurotoxic infection every day, and pain is horrific. I watched my mother die and my sister die slowly, and it was not pleasant. There was nothing pleasant about it at all. So it's a difficult time, death. It can be, for 3 out of 4 people, it will be difficult. And it can even be horrendous and horrific. And that's why we need to love anyone you know who's facing this transition. Be around them if they need your support. Help them in any way you can. Make them comfortable. Make sure they know they're not alone if they're frightened. Those of us in the spiritual belief and understanding, we know we're not alone anyway because heaven's right there. We just have to move into it though, and we have to focus on staying clean. So our focus is still working to the end to not sort of do any wrongdoing. And that's why I forgive all the people who have hurt me in my life, particularly the medical profession here in Melbourne who deal with fungal and yeast diseases. They really are pathetic. And I just have to accept that they're just not very good. And they just sure didn't love me, that's for sure. So these are the sort of things we have to learn to do as spiritual children, to let go of any hurt that people have caused to you. That's an attachment, you see, to the physical world and to the false identity. I have to pray for those who hurt me, which I do every morning. So we do that, and then we try to bring love to others if we can. I can't do much spiritual works anymore now. I can only drive to local shops and back. But I meet children there on the street, sitting down, homeless, drug problems, etc. I get to know their names. I sit down and chat with them, find out a bit about their life. It's really stunning what you hear about their life. It's really quite amazing, some of their life stories. And they've fallen down, they've tripped up, they've been trapped, they've been conned, whatever's happened to them, some tragedy in their life, addiction, hooked by sort of satanic addictions. Either way, they are a spiritual child of the loving spiritual creator just as much as I am. They're in trouble. So I sit with them and buy them a bit of food or drink or something and get to know them. And if I didn't have them, I wouldn't be able to flow this love to anyone. So that's the spiritual love in me. So I've got to thank them in their need for providing me with a small opportunity to just do a little bit of something for them. It's not much, but it's something. They're recognised. They're not alone. I see them. I say, hope everything works out for you. I can't do any more at the moment, so than that. But this is what we all have to do. Keep loving your family. If you're in a nursing home and you're dying, thank the staff who are caring for you. Thank them. Still, share the love. Be kind if you can. If you're not in agony. You won't be able to do it if you're in agony. I assure you of that. So do your best to the end to express love and think of others and care for them and be grateful and thankful, etc. And to whatever degree you do it to the fullest degree. I've only got a little cup now filled with a little bit of love because I can't do much. I'm so ill now. But as long as it's full, my little cup, and I do these tiny little things for these couple of children up the street, that's all I can do. So that's 100%. Now another person who's well and healthy, they've got like a tankard of a cup filled to the brim with all sorts of things they're doing to help people in charities or Jewish Christian churches and their charities or any humanitarian work in the world, or loving their family, loving their neighbour, loving their parents, joining groups to help in other ways. They've got a really large cup and it's filled because they're healthy, their body's healthy and well, and they're driven by the spirit of love. As long as they do 100% and they're not lazy, their 100% relatively speaking, it's exactly 100% like mine. They're both 100%. That's what Jesus is saying. Even if you come into the vineyard late in your life and only work for an hour, that's all you do. But that's the end of your life. You're fully committed to being spiritual and you do a little bit of work then. He said, you'll enter heaven. Whereas someone else who's been doing it their whole life for like 80 years, that's 100%. At the end of, they're still doing it at the end. They'll enter heaven too. And you enter equally. This is the beauty of Jesus' teachings. There's no numbers or you're bigger than me or I'm greater than you. That's not there in heaven. That's not there. It's what you might call a real communist world, a communal world where everyone's equal. That's really heaven. There's no hierarchy and stuff. That's, again, the Jewish gobbledygook stuff coming into Jewish Christian churches. We're all children of the heavenly spiritual being. Now, I know parents may have a favourite child, perhaps amongst 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, perhaps, but they love them all. I mean, a good, healthy, normal parents. So, you love your children. You want them all to be successful, all to be well. They're equally your children. So that's the way the heavenly loving spiritual creator is. So that's that chapter on getting ready, be ready to die. There's only one way. You've got to move into your spiritual identity, your spiritual body of love and non-violence, and live out of it now. And don't leave it. Don't be tempted, even when people hurt you. Don't retaliate in kind. Don't join any army, navy or air force anywhere in the world, and that includes Australia, where I am. Don't join them. They're evil. We need police forces, local police forces. Everyone needs that. We need coast guards or border patrols. Everyone needs that. But we do not need an armaments industry worth $300 billion a year or something with nuclear weapons and bombs and drones and tanks and guns and all the other evil, stinking filth of Satan that these murdering satanic leaders teach little children to learn how to use to kill other children. That's pure satanic. I'm sorry, but that's what it is. According to Jesus, that's all satanic. I agree. We're all going to die. Stop doing that. Worship life, not death. That's my emotional end to this to this episode. I'm an anti-war protester. I'm a pacifist. I'm a Christian. I love Buddha's teachings too. I had to leave the Christian church because of the lie they were teaching about the Jewish religion being the same as Jesus. It's a lie. I went across to the Buddhists. They're pacifists. They know what Jesus taught. But Jesus stood on Buddha's shoulders, you see. Buddha experienced a clear light mind as Jesus did. Buddha said, come and experience this and you'll understand your true identity, and when you leave you'll never suffer again. You'll be in nirvana, heaven, spiritually world, paradise, whatever you want to call it. You'll be in a world of no suffering. Buddha taught that. Jesus understood the same thing, had the same experience. He realized everyone's got this possibility too, as Buddha did, so he started to teach it. But he did another thing. Instead of having come out and sit here under the tree with me in the forest, like Buddha did, or in the wilderness, that's where Jesus went, they both had to go into the nature. They both had to go into creation, away from children, away from cities and towns. You have to connect. I mean, it helps. You don't have to maybe, but it helps you to connect personally to heaven. You have to meditate there, and then you'll connect. Then you can come back in, because the collective consciousness, certainly in Australia now, is all secular, non-believing, faithless, devoid of spiritual love, uncaring. Our society is really shifting into this selfish sort of dynamic now, devoid of spiritual life force. Not everyone, but it really has taken over. So you need to get away from that to connect fully to spirit in heaven personally. Then you come back in. So what Jesus did was he realized, we now, Buddha and he are both selfless. This love just flows through them. But Jesus realized, I'll go out now and I'll see the lepers and the prostitutes and the sinners and the outcasts and the sick. I'll go out and touch them and love them and hold them. I'll bring love to the outcasts because I'm selfless. I can do it. And they are children of the loving Creator as much as anyone. So his was love in action. Buddha was more passive love. Come and meditate with me. Jesus had to meditate too. He had to go through the same dynamic that Buddha had to go through to wake up. They both were, the word Buddha means the awakened one. Jesus was also an awakened child of the spiritual loving Creator. They were both awakened to their spiritual identity, or clear light-minded identity is what the Buddhists would perhaps call it. It's the same thing, just different language. Just don't worry about the language. It's the same experience. So Jesus brought this extraordinary dynamic of all the loving others, helping others, serving others, be a servant to others, go out and give your physical body to others. However many heartbeats you got left, help them, serve them. Go out to the homeless on the street, the poor, the needy, the sick. Go and help them. And of course your family. Just if your family's enough for you to cope with, well, okay, just love them. As one of my friend's mothers once said when we were about 18, if anyone's got any love to give to anyone else after they love their family, they're lucky. In my older age, I can see how she could be quite right about that. So that's the main thing. Love those close to you. That's the most important thing of all. They won't always be with you. You won't always be with them. And wherever you are, love those there that are close to you, in your vicinity. As the 60s song went, I'm a child of the 60s, if you can't be with the one you love the one you're with. The 60s. Songs of love and peace and anti-war, those were the days. Okay, on that rose-coloured reminiscent note, love your way to heaven, be prepared to die, get ready to die now. Get ready today. Get ready right now by simply living spiritual life of love. So it's a beautiful way to get ready, isn't it? You get ready to die by loving everyone. Well, you can't beat that. Bye for now.